Hello guys, in this video I'll talk about tactics and tips for healing in Phase 4 raid, Icecrown Citadel. This is the first part of this guide series that will cover the first 4 bosses. Make note that footage shown in this video was recorded on PTR and all of the bosses done on normal mode. I'll make sure to mention all the different tactics for heroic mode. So the first boss of this raid is Lord Marrowgar, and he's a pretty easy encounter that requires some consistent tank and raid healing with good positioning and movement. As a healer in the first phase, you will be stacked with the rest of the raid behind and close to the boss. Make sure to keep your tanks up and heal the targets that get targeted by the bone spike or get damaged by the cold flame. You might also be assigned to stay at range with 6 other players so that the boss doesn't put the cold flames on top of the raid. If more healers are assigned to stay at range, make sure to spread so if one of you gets targeted by the cold flame, only one person needs to move at a time. After some time, the boss will cast Bone Storm and start spinning around the room, which is essentially a phase 2 that lasts 30 seconds. In this phase, the boss damages all the raid and he deals more damage to people that are closest to him. At that time, make sure you spread as much as possible and use your rocket boots here. If you are a hard casting healer like Holy Paladin or Resto shaman, make sure you minimize your movement and let others spread around you. That's because in this phase there will be a lot of raid healing to do. The boss targets the furthest raid member from him, which in heroic mode should be assigned to hunters or some other mobile casters. Make sure you dodge the cold flame that he shoots from the position where he stops and heal the raid as much as you can. Also, make sure you throw some fast heals on targets that get really low either by cold flames or bone spikes. After Bone Storm, you just repeat the phase 1 and so on. Lady Deathwhisper is a second encounter in the raid that can be quite difficult, especially on the heroic mode. The fight has 2 phases, the first one where you need to DPS through her mana shield and deal with adds, and the second one after the mana shield has been removed. As a healer in the first phase, you need to stand on the platform behind the boss and spread around with your ranged DPS. There will be adds spawning every 60 seconds that will need to be tanked by your 2 tanks. Make sure to keep them up. There will be some raid damage, but most important thing is that you need to be ready for a Death and Decay spell that boss casts. It will be a big green circle on the ground that you and the raid need to move out of. That's why it's important to spread around a little bit so it doesn't hit the whole raid. If you don't get targeted by it, be ready to heal people that do. Boss also casts mind control on one target that should get CC'd as fast as possible so they don't kill anyone. When boss enters phase 2, it gets a bit chaotic. The most important mechanic that people need to pay attention to is Vengeful Shades, an untargetable ghost that will target a random player and follow him. If the player gets hit by them, they explode and do a lot of damage to everyone that is close. That's why the raid needs to spread around the whole boss room. If you see the ghost close to you, move away to be sure they're not targeting you. Boss will also cast Frostbolt Volley that does a lot of raid damage, so make sure to keep people healed up. 2 tanks will be on the boss because of the threat reduction ability he does, so you need to be aware of which tank is tanking at what time and keep him up. On heroic mode, adds continue to spawn even in phase 2, that's why the 3rd tank is needed. That means there will be a lot more healing to do on a 3rd tank and the whole raid. It gets really messy, so you and your raid have to do your best to avoid unnecessary damage and burst the boss down as fast as possible. Gunship Battle is the 3rd and the easiest encounter of the raid, and most groups will be doing it on heroic from day 1. In this encounter, the raid will be split in 2 groups, one that will stay on the ship and one that will be jumping on the enemy ship to kill the mage that freezes the cannons. There will also be 4 people on the cannons, and because this fight is not that healing intensive, one of the healers will be assigned. For jumping to the enemy ship, usually 1 healer is enough, and the best option for that is Discipline Priest. As a healer on a friendly ship, you just heal up the raid when people take damage and dodge the rockets indicated on the ground. You can throw some heals on people that are on the enemy ship if you get close to the edge, but mostly it's not needed. If you're the healer that goes to the enemy ship, you will mostly need to heal your tank, cause he will be tanking the main boss of the ship. This boss gets a stacking debuff that increases his damage, so the longer you stay on the enemy ship, the harder he will hit, so keep that in mind. So, 4th encounter, Deathbringer Saurfang. This is a one-phase encounter that requires a lot of healing and coordination between healers. Before boss fight starts, there needs to be some position assignments for the whole raid. The range DPS and healers need to be split in 5 to 6 groups per max 3 people, and spread in a half circle around the boss at max range. There's two main reasons for that. The first is the ability Boiling Blood that targets a player and is applied to players in range. This debuff lasts 15 seconds and ticks every 3 seconds, so the group of people that gets it needs to get healed. Priest shielding these targets is most beneficial, because then boss doesn't generate his blood power. Second reason for spreading at max range is Blood Beasts. Boss spawns 5 Blood Beasts on himself that range DPS need to burn down as fast as possible. If they get close they can do a lot of damage, and on heroic mode they can one-shot casters. That's why it's important for groups to be max range from the boss and that they use slow and knockback abilities. As a healer you don't really have to worry about that, as it is a job for other roles, but it's good to know. The second assignment that needs to be done is for a debuff Mark of the Fallen Champion. This debuff deals 5% of boss's melee damage to a player that has it, and it can't be removed, even through death. Boss applies this debuff every time he fills up his blood power to full, and every healer should be assigned to heal every other mark. For example, your Holy Paladin heals the target with the first mark, Resto Shaman the second target that gets the mark, and so on. If a person with the mark dies, the boss is healed for 5%, so healing the mark targets is a high priority. Boss should be dead with max 3 to 4 marks. Other important thing to mention is that the boss deals more damage as his blood power fills up, so the two tanks will be tanking the boss and mark targets will need a lot more healing. At 30%, boss enrages and gains 30% attack speed. This should be aimed when he's low on blood power. At this point, Rage should pop Heroism or Bloodlust and finish the boss as fast as possible. Healing will become really intense on tanks, and when the boss builds up his blood power, they'll need to use their cooldowns and other external damage reduction cooldowns. Try to pop your mana regen abilities close to 30%, so your healer group has as much mana as possible. Also try to coordinate which druid will pop Innervate on which healer, because it will be needed at the start of the phase. Thank you for watching the first part of this guide series. I'll be doing other parts soon, so make sure you follow. There might be some minor things I missed or didn't mention because it's been a long time since I raided ICC, so my plan is after few weeks when ICC will be released, I'll do a short version of the video with tips that I think would be useful to people. If you have some additional questions, you can ask in the comments.